Well, good morning. It's great to be here. It really is a privilege for me to be invited by your leadership team and Scott to be here with you and to be part of this process. When I looked at the gospel, and Scott had given me the freedom to choose another gospel, I said, no, this gospel works. This gospel works. Let's ask the question, why is it that the lepers came forward? Certainly it was because of their illness and the kind of isolation that they were experiencing because of that illness. There was all sorts of rituals that would keep these folks separate from the community. All of that certainly drew them to approach Jesus on this day. But I want to go back just a little bit more. For each one of these lepers, there was this desire, this hope that they were going to be whole once again. And that's what drove them to risk all of the protocols and rituals that kept them separate, to make their way to see Jesus, to approach him, to raise up their voice, and to ask for mercy. And the reason why I think that has something to do with pastoral planning is because it's not sufficient to have a great tagline. It's not sufficient to have a very succinct phrase that describes who you are and what you're about. The ultimate test is what you do. And being able to go from vision to action is what pastoral planning is all about. And I'm going to suggest to you it's really what the church is all about. And so as we come here together, we just sort of need to spend some time and sort of figure out, well, first of all, individually, what brings us here? What's really driving us? And certainly for each one of us, it's a different story. But at the end of the day, there's some commonality. And the commonality is that there's this sense of belief that our faith allows us to hope for a full life. And as a result, we come here and we come together and we are engaged as a community. And there are many things that then begin to serve as an expression of that hope. Hope is not a tactic. We need to move beyond just that aspirational moment to action. And that's what brought the lepers to Jesus, and that's what brings us all here. Each one of us in our own individual situations with the not just hope, but the willingness to act on that hope to make our lives whole. So the pastoral planning process helps you to move from that beautiful mission statement that you have, to love God, to love others, and to make disciples. And clearly, this is a community that has acted on that. You don't need a pastoral planning process to do that. The hope is that the pastoral planning process will build on what you already have begun here in this community. Let me give you an example. It's important for you as a community to have the youth of this community welcomed. And so over the last month or so, you've welcomed a youth minister. Because it's important for you to create a community where young people are welcomed, where they're engaged, where they can create the kinds of memories that will allow them to be rooted in faith that you hope they will be able to sustain as they begin their adult lives. That's a great example of taking that vision, that aspiration you have, and beginning to act on it by bringing someone who might be able to facilitate that process, that youth ministry. You've dedicated resources and time and energy so that that can happen. And so the question is, what else is there that you hope for, that you aspire for as a community? And how is it that you might enter into a process that will sort of concretize that? That's really what the pastoral planning process is all about, is taking that vision that you have and developing a pathway that allows you to see it in actions. Actions that then you can point to others, to family, to friends, to neighbors, to colleagues, that sphere of influence that all of us have, and you might be able then to point to them and say, this is how we love God. This is how we love others. This is how we make disciples. The process is very iterative, and there is a role for everyone to play in that process. So regardless of whether you're part of the leadership team that will be gathering later on this week to sort of kick this off, all of you here, all of us here, have a role to play in two ways. One is to pray for the success of this initiative. And as you become aware of this initiative, to pay attention to it. Because as the pastoral, as the leadership team begins to put together some suggestions and bring that to you, it's important for you to pay attention to that, provide some reaction, comments. At the end of the day, this needs to be owned by all of you as a community, not just by Father Scott, leadership team, or particular individuals. So in those two ways, by prayer and by engagement and embracing of this pastoral plan, is something that all of you are called to be a part of. Let me just say that the lepers took the risk of acting on their hope and their dream. It was worthwhile for them. I can't explain how 9 of them didn't come back to say thank you. But for that one who did, it was important, and it was clearly worth the time, the effort, the energy to take the risk of breaking through all of those things that contained that person as a leper, to make their way, to raise up their voice, and to seek God's mercy. That leper, those lepers walked away cleansed, made whole. It's worthwhile for a community like yours to take that time, that energy, to step back from the day-to-day and to really begin to open your hearts and your minds to how else you might be able to take that wonderful mission to love God, to love others, to make disciples, and begin to, in a very concrete way, manifest that in the community. So our hope and our prayer is that that effort will provide that kind of growth and that kind of vitality for you as a community. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be here with you this morning and to accompany you on this process. It really is a role more of a facilitator than anything else. I cannot tell you how impressed I've been with each of the opportunities that I've had to be exposed to your community. And it's that sense of hope that certainly I carry as I begin this process. Thank you very much.